Welcome to SpeakUp Talks. I'm Travis, and I'm joined by Mahesh Vasnani.
Yes, Travis, thank you for having me here and looking forward to our conversation.
A pleasure. I don't know if our guests have seen you before, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Mahesh and I'm an account executive at SpeakUp, helping companies implement SpeakUp.
Yes, and we were actually celebrating the fact that one of our customers recently about to launch the program with SpeakUp, and is actually a customer is in the aviation industry, which I know is a hobby of yours.
Yeah, indeed. And it's great to combine the two topics that are really close to my heart, both compliance, ethics, and aviation. So yeah, really good news indeed.
Yeah, you recently shared an article on LinkedIn that was called Confessions of a New Corporate Pilot, which I thought was very interesting. Can you tell us about why you shared it and just a little bit about it?
Sure. So, working in compliance and ethics, but also very keenly following aviation, I think that both go hand in hand because aviation is heavily dependent on compliance and heavily regulated. So basically, I was just reading through it and it caught to me that sometimes compliance is not compliant, right? Sometimes people who are supposed to follow procedures, especially in such a high risk profession, if they don't comply, you're not losing, a few millions in fines, but you're losing precious lives as well. And that article was basically about a pilot who had this dream job of flying corporate jets. He finished his line training, he joined the airline, and basically he thought it was fun and games, but eventually he saw the gap in the culture internally, safety culture. He found some oddities and some violation of SOPs, which made him speak up and leave that organization and flag those issues. He could have also stayed quiet and just do his job, but he decided to speak up, and that potentially saved lives.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can, obviously, since it is crossroads of your interest in your profession, maybe take us a little bit deeper into why ethics and compliance in aviation is so important, not only from obviously the lives factor, but also, cost and reputation wise.
Yeah. So, we have to see the two things differently, right? You have ethics and then you also have compliance, right? So ethics is mostly about the lives that you mentioned. It's about doing the right thing. If you are up in 38,000 feet, they are just two guys, there's no Google, there's no outside support, right? So you have to do the right thing. You might come across a failure, which if you report might ground you as a pilot, but you still have to because that's the right thing. Otherwise it will affect lives of passengers. Maybe you won't encounter issues in this flight, but next flight, the next pilot might encounter issues and it could go down. So you have doing the right thing, and then you also have the compliance, right? So compliance is basically enabling organizations to fly their airplane safety, maintain that reputation of being a safe airline, following all the regulations set out by, for example, ICAO or EASA or FAA and what have you. Basically, they both translate to one thing. If you have a strong ethics and compliance culture, you have a strong safety culture. So that's why it's important. And that's why it's there and relevant.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we take a real life example of maybe lack of safety culture, obviously I think a big one that we all are aware of is Boeing and the Boeing MAX 777 or
737 MAX.
737 MAX, yeah. So they spent a lot of money developing the aircraft, and they came out with some problems, and instead of losing all that money, they decided to maybe bury some facts and to just sweep it under the rug, as you say.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because of that, not only did a lot of lives get lost, but then the backlash of that was that Boeing still lost a ton of money and reputational damage. So I guess it really kind of is a clear example of doing the right thing is still very important, not only just for preventing the outcome that you actually did when you were trying to actually sweep it under the rug.
Yeah.
So in the end, it kind of comes back to you. So it's just better just to do the right thing in the beginning, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And also, because a lot of these organizations are profit driven and they do billions in revenue. They want to maximize the profits. Doing the right thing sometimes takes a backseat.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for such big companies, $1 billion or $2 billion fine is nothing.
Yeah.
So it's really important that this is really embedded in the culture, which is to do the right thing. So yeah.
Indeed. Maybe you can share maybe another example of kind of where compliance can go wrong in the aviation industry.
Yeah, good question. The one that I can think of from the top of my head is basically a very prominent airline in Morocco. And basically, this flight took place in 2018. It was a domestic flight, so it was within Morocco. And the operating crew was flying something called a V-leg. So basically, you start with a base, you go to your final destination via another stopover.
Yeah.
So it becomes a V-leg. And that's what they were operating. What happened was, first of all, the captain of this flight was a senior line training captain, 61 years old, and the first officer was substantially junior, less experienced, very young, 25-year-old. So you see that the cockpit gradients was huge. The power distance was huge. And if you have such a huge power distance, you feel you feel some sort of a disparity.
Yeah.
And you are sometimes afraid to speak up. Long story short, they were flying from Casablanca to Al Hoceima. And as they were approaching into the airport, the weather was really bad and poor visibility as well. The pilot flying was captain, and he basically decided to disregard all the procedures and just wanted to land despite the bad weather. Yeah. To give you some context, he was flying 45 feet above the water.
Wow.
While there's still 7-kilometer distance between the aircraft and the runway.
Ooh. I mean, as a fairly frequent flyer, that thought that one person can make that decision and maybe disregard normal kind of checks and whatnot and safety procedures, it's a bit terrifying. So, I mean, I think as a passenger and someone who relies on these airlines, I really do want them to embrace a safety culture.
Yeah.
But, I mean, obviously, it's not all bad news. So this is an example of poor compliance or poor safety in aviation. But maybe do you have any examples of any good examples of that?
Yeah, absolutely. You have, for example, one of the launching clients of SpeakUp, a new airline, and they haven't even started flying yet, and they're already, creating a culture of speaking up, a culture of ethics, a culture of safety from the get-go.
Yeah.
It's really important to start before you start and sustain that culture, because eventually it's going to affect you not only from the passenger point of view if you're an airline, but also from a company's, point of view in the sense of saving reputation.
Yeah. And
that goes for any organization, right? To do the right thing and to have a culture of speaking up and a culture of safety.
Yeah, I mean, if an accident can be avoided, whether it's for financial reasons or just not wanting people to get hurt, which is a good reason in my book.
Yeah.
It's going to benefit the organization regardless. And,
for sure.
But I think there's also a lot of comparisons with just all industries, right? Because obviously airline industry and maybe pharmaceuticals, for example, are higher risk. But I mean, the lessons learned about safety, compliance, speak up culture is applicable everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have all these regulations, we have all these rules in place to make sure, regardless of the nature of your business, you as an organization are doing the right thing. Because it might not affect you, it might affect someone else down the line, and you don't want to play that game of risk, because it just takes one accident to ruin a whole reputation, or just one mishap.
So today we saw how in aviation, whistleblowing and compliance really matter. The stakes are higher, but I think also, as mentioned, the lessons can be learned everywhere.
One thing I would also like to reiterate is that regardless of the size or nature of your organization, if you're leading by example, others in the industry will pick that up. So you're not only improving your culture, your reputation, you're also creating the whole industry a lot safer. And I think that's why it's important to really focus on the culture of safety, the culture of speaking up, culture of ethics. It should not be a compliance thing. It should be a philosophical thing. It should be
Yeah.
a philosophy.
Indeed. Nice.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I would say thank you so much for joining us. And also thank you to our listeners.
Been a pleasure and looking forward to sharing more stories in the future. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.